Ladies and gentlemen, every great battle in life doesn't start with swords or opponents. It begins in the mind. The greatest war we will ever face is not out there in the world, but within ourselves. The inner enemy. Doubt, fear, insecurity, procrastination, guilt, regret. These aren't just emotions. They are mental chains that hold us back from living the life we were meant to live. We often speak of defeating external enemies, competitors, critics, opposition. But what about the enemy within? The voice that says, "You're not good enough." The fear that whispers, "What if you fail?" The laziness that pulls you back to comfort when growth demands discomfort. That is the inner enemy. And until we learn to silence it, we will never find true freedom. The greatest enemy we face in life is not someone on the outside trying to tear us down, but the silent, persistent voice inside our own minds. This inner enemy often takes many forms: doubt, fear, insecurity, self-hate, and the harsh voice of judgment that echoes louder than any external critic. It lives in the pauses between our thoughts, the hesitation before we try something new, the shame we carry from our past, and the fear of failure that holds us back. This enemy doesn't yell or scream, it whispers. It whispers lies like, "You're not good enough, you'll never make it, why even try?" And the tragedy is that over time we begin to believe those whispers. We let them shape our identity. We shrink our dreams to fit their limits. This enemy grows every time we choose comfort over courage. Every time we back away from a challenge because we're afraid we might not succeed. And the longer we let it run free, the stronger it becomes. It becomes the invisible force behind our procrastination, our excuses, and our self-sabotage. We blame the world, we blame others, we blame circumstances. But the truth is, most of the time it's not the world that stops us. It's us. It's the enemy within that tells us to settle for less, to avoid risk, to play small. It's the part of us that fears rejection more than it desires success. And what makes this enemy so powerful is that it knows us better than anyone. It knows our weaknesses, our regrets, our pain. It uses them like weapons, turning our own memories against us. It makes us relive moments we wish we could forget, not to teach us, but to break us. It tells us that we are defined by our lowest points, that we are only as good as our worst mistakes. It convinces us that we are only as good as our worst mistakes. It convinces us that we are alone in our struggle, that no one would understand or care. And when we stay silent, when we hide behind a smile while battling a storm inside, we give it room to grow. But perhaps the most dangerous thing the inner enemy does is convince us that it is us, that the doubt, the fear, the criticism, the voice that says you are not enough, that these are just the truth, that they are who we are. And once we accept that lie, we stop fighting. We accept the cage. We call it reality. We stop trying to change because we've forgotten that we were born to rise. That is why recognizing the inner enemy is the first and most crucial step. You must learn to separate your true self from the voice of fear. You must learn to question every thought that tries to belittle you, because until you identify the real enemy, you will always be fighting the wrong battle. You will keep trying to fix the world around you, not realizing the world is inside. The inner enemy is subtle, but it is the most dangerous opponent we will ever face. And unless we confront it, challenge it, and rise above it, we will forever be held back, not by the world, but by ourselves. Before we can change anything in our lives, our habits, our mindset, our direction, we must first become aware of what is happening within us. Awareness is not just about noticing your thoughts. It's about developing a deep, honest understanding of your internal world. It's about shining a light on the parts of your mind you usually avoid. The fear you try to cover with busyness. The pain you numb with distractions. The lies you've told yourself so many times that they started to sound like truth. Without awareness, we live on autopilot. We respond to life not with intention, but with reaction. We become prisoners to our thoughts without even realizing we've become. Many people go through life completely unaware of the patterns that rule them. They repeat the same behaviors, fall into the same traps, attract the same kind of pain, and wonder why nothing changes. But the truth is, you cannot defeat what you cannot see. If you're not aware of the way fear shows up in your life, it will keep controlling you. If you're not aware of the excuses you make, you'll keep believing they are valid. If you're not aware of how self-doubt speaks in your mind, you will keep mistaking it for logic. Awareness is the first time you say, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking like this? Why do I keep holding myself back? It takes courage to become aware, because awareness is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront parts of yourself you may have buried for years. It makes you face your insecurities, your limiting beliefs, your unhealthy coping mechanisms. It asks you to stop blaming the outside world and start taking responsibility for your inner one. But this discomfort is necessary, because only through awareness can you begin to make conscious choices. Without it, your thoughts control you. With it, you can start to take control of your thoughts. Developing awareness doesn't happen in a single moment. It's a practice, a daily habit of checking in with yourself. It can start with something as simple as journaling your thoughts, meditating in silence, or reflecting honestly on how you responded to situations during the day. The more you observe yourself, the more you begin to see the patterns that have been running in the background. Patterns of fear, of self-sabotage, of self-limitation. And once you see them, you can choose differently. You can pause before reacting. You can catch yourself in the act of negative self-talk and replace it with something empowering. You can stop blaming your past and start owning your future. True awareness brings clarity. It brings light to the dark corners of your mind, the ones the inner enemy loves to hide in. It exposes the lies it tells you. You will never change. This is just how you are. It's too late for you. When you become aware of how your mind works, you start to see that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your past. You are the observer, the witness, the one who can step back, analyze, and then choose a new. Awareness is the doorway to all transformation. It is the silent but powerful beginning of every victory over the inner enemy. The human mind is a powerful instrument. It has the potential to create miracles or manifest misery. It can elevate you beyond your wildest dreams or trap you in invisible walls of limitation. The difference lies not in the mind itself, but in how it is trained. An untrained mind is like a wild horse. It pulls you in all directions, reacts impulsively, and is controlled by fear, ego, and emotion. But a trained mind becomes your greatest ally, becomes the foundation of resilience, clarity, confidence, and inner strength. And like any powerful tool, it doesn't become refined by accident. It requires daily, intentional practice. Most people live with an untrained mind, which means their thoughts dictate their actions without question. They wake up and instantly feel overwhelmed. Their first thoughts are of stress, anxiety, failure, comparison, regret. And instead of pausing to evaluate those thoughts, they follow them. They believe them. They let those thoughts shape their moods, decisions, and identity. They don't question the voice that says, you can't, or you're behind, or you're not good enough. And over time, this mental chaos becomes their normal. But just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's right. Just because a thought is loud doesn't mean it's true. Training your mind means developing the ability to pause, observe, and redirect. It means taking back control. It means saying, no, I refuse to be ruled by fear. I refuse to accept limitation. I choose clarity. I choose growth. But this level of mastery does not come naturally. It must be earned. And it's earned through discipline, through intentional mental conditioning. It might start with meditation, where you learn to sit in silence and watch your thoughts without becoming them. It might begin with journaling, where you write out your thoughts to see them clearly and strip them of their power. It could involve reading books that challenge your mindset, listening to mentors who shift your perspective, or surrounding yourself with people who inspire mental growth. Training your mind also means developing mental toughness. It means learning to sit with discomfort without running, learning to do hard things even when you don't feel like it. It means practicing gratitude when your mind wants to focus on what's missing. It means choosing purpose when your emotions push you toward escape. It's not glamorous work. It's quiet, it's internal, and it often feels invisible to the world. But it is the work that changes everything. When your mind is trained, you no longer react to life. You respond. You don't break down when things go wrong. You adapt. You don't seek validation. You generate confidence from within. You become intentional in your words, your actions, and your energy. You stop being the victim of your thoughts and start being the master of them. And most importantly, a trained mind allows you to access peace, not the kind of peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but a deep inner peace that exists even when life is chaotic. The truth is, the mind will always be active. It never stops thinking, never stops evaluating, but whether it becomes your prison or your power source depends on how you train it. You have the ability to reshape your inner world. You have the choice to strengthen the muscle of mental discipline, to shift from survival to purpose, from noise to clarity. The mind will either keep you stuck or set you free, and the training you commit to is what determines which path you take. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions we experience, and yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. It often disguises itself as logic, caution, or even wisdom. It whispers, what if you fail? What if you get rejected? What if you're not ready? And because fear is so convincing, so persistent, we tend to believe it. But the truth about fear is that it is not an enemy to be destroyed. It is a barrier to be pushed through. Fear does not disappear by thinking about it, analyzing it, or waiting for it to go away. Fear only loses its grip when you move forward in spite of it. The mind makes fear feel bigger than it is. It inflates outcomes, magnifies risks, and dramatizes failure. And the longer you sit in fear, the more powerful it becomes. It feeds on inaction. The more you avoid what you're afraid of, the stronger the fear grows. It starts to shape your decisions, your beliefs, your self-worth. You begin to stay in the comfort zone not because you're truly comfortable, but because you've made fear your guide. You avoid challenges, not because you lack ability, but because fear convinces you that failure would be fatal to your identity. But something incredible happens the moment you take action. The moment you take even the smallest step toward the thing you fear, you break its illusion. You disrupt its control. You show yourself that fear is not a wall, it's a shadow. Action reveals that most fears are not grounded in reality, but in imagined outcomes. You feared starting the project, but once you begin, you realize it's manageable. You feared the conversation, but once you have it, you feel relief. You feared stepping on stage, but once you do, you tap into a strength you didn't know you had. That is the power of action. It changes not just your circumstances, but your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who faces fear, not someone who is owned by it. Fear never completely disappears. It will always show up when you aim higher, step into the unknown, or try something that matters. But that's not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're growing. Action doesn't require the absence of fear. It requires the willingness to act while afraid. That's real courage. And the more you do it, the more you build confidence. Confidence doesn't come from waiting until you are ready. It comes from showing up scared again and again and realizing you can survive what you feared. It comes from proving to yourself that you are stronger than the voice that says, "Don't try." The beauty of action is that it builds momentum. One small step leads to another. Each moment of bravery makes the next one easier, and with every action taken in the face of fear, you change the narrative in your head. You rewrite your self-image from someone who hesitates to someone who dares, from someone who avoids discomfort to someone who walks straight into it and comes out stronger. Fear thrives in hesitation, but it cannot survive sustained movement. When you take action, you become bigger than the fear. You don't need to eliminate it. You only need to keep moving forward, one brave step at a time. Self-discipline is not just a tool for success. It is the very foundation of personal freedom. While the world around us constantly tempts us with distractions, shortcuts, and comfort, self-discipline stands as the quiet force that keeps us aligned with our purpose. It is the inner strength that helps you say no when everything in you wants to say yes to the easy way out. It's the ability to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it. And when it comes to defeating the inner enemy, the voice of self-doubt, laziness, and fear, self-discipline becomes your most reliable weapon. There is a false belief that motivation is what drives change, but motivation is fleeting. Some days you wake up inspired and ready. Most days you don't. You feel tired, unmotivated, or overwhelmed. And it's in those moments that self-discipline must rise. Self-discipline is not emotional. It is committed. It doesn't ask how you feel. It simply honors the promise you made to yourself. It wakes you up early when your body craves sleep, takes you to the gym when your mind begs for rest, opens the book when distractions are calling, and brings you back to your goals when the world tries to pull you away. It is not punishment. It is power. The power to choose your future over your feelings. Self-discipline isn't something you're born with. It's built over time through repeated choices. Every time you resist the urge to procrastinate, every time you choose progress over pleasure, every time you silence the excuses and take action, you're building it. Think of it like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And with strength comes confidence. When you keep the small promises you make to yourself, like sticking to a morning routine, finishing your task, showing up for your goals, you begin to trust yourself. That trust becomes the armor that protects you from the inner enemy. But discipline is not only about action. It's also about restraint. It's about knowing when to walk away from things that drain you, tempt you, or break your focus. It's about having the maturity to delay gratification, to prioritize long-term gains over instant pleasure. The inner enemy thrives on your impulses. It wants you to give in to distractions, to scroll endlessly, to eat for comfort, to speak before thinking, to quit when things get hard. But every act of discipline says, I am in control. Not my fears, not my cravings, not my emotions, me. Self-discipline creates structure in a chaotic world. It gives you a rhythm, a system, a path to follow when life feels uncertain. And while the world celebrates talent, brilliance, and luck, the quiet truth is that disciplined people go farther. They show up when others quit. They grow while others stall. They master the fundamentals while others chase quick fixes. Discipline is the reason some people rise and others remain stuck. It's the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It doesn't shout, it doesn't need applause, but its results speak louder than anything else. In the fight against the inner enemy, self-discipline is the sword you carry daily. It protects your focus, sharpens your mind, and strengthens your resolve. It doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it builds a life that feels deeply fulfilling in the long run. Because in the end, the discipline to do the hard things today creates the freedom to live the life you truly want tomorrow. The words you speak to yourself shape the world you live in. Every day, an internal conversation is taking place in your mind. A dialogue that influences how you feel, what you believe, and how you act. This self-talk can either be a force of strength or a weapon of destruction. Unfortunately for many people, this voice is not a friend, but a constant critic. It highlights flaws, magnifies failures, questions your worth, and drains your confidence. This negative self-talk often starts subtly. A small doubt, a casual insult, a quiet comparison, but over time it becomes a dominant narrative, a story of limitations, of inadequacy, of self-blame. And if this story is never challenged, it becomes the lens through which you see your entire life. The inner enemy thrives on negative self-talk. It repeats every mistake you've ever made and attaches your identity to your failures. It tells you that you're not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. It convinces you that you are broken and that no matter how hard you try, you will always fall short. It feeds on shame and regret, often replaying painful moments from the past to remind you of your weaknesses. This toxic loop can leave you paralyzed, stuck in a cycle where you expect disappointment and unconsciously prepare for it before anything even happens. The problem is not just the presence of negative thoughts. It's the fact that you start to believe them. But here's the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. And that means you have the power to challenge and change them. The first step in defeating the inner enemy is becoming aware of how you speak to yourself. Pay attention to your internal dialogue. Catch the moments when you insult yourself for a small mistake, when you downplay your strengths, when you anticipate failure before trying. Every time you catch a negative statement, pause and question it. Would you speak that way to a friend? Would you say those words to a child trying their best? Then why speak that way to yourself? Once you've identified these toxic patterns, the next step is to consciously replace them with empowering language. This doesn't mean lying to yourself or ignoring problems. It means speaking truth with compassion and strength. Instead of saying, I always mess everything up, say, I made a mistake, but I'm learning and growing. Instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, say, I'm improving every day and I deserve to try. Instead of fearing, I'm going to fail, declare, I have the courage to face whatever comes, and I'll rise no matter what. Empowering language reprograms your mind. It shifts you from a mindset of limitation to one of growth. These affirming statements may feel awkward at first. That's normal. You've spent years, maybe decades, repeating negative beliefs. Replacing them takes time, repetition, and patience. But with consistency, your inner voice begins to change. You stop being your worst critic and start becoming your own supporter. And as your internal dialogue transforms, so does your outer reality. You carry yourself differently. You take more risks. You recover faster from setbacks. You begin to attract better energy, better relationships, and better outcomes. Because you've upgraded the most important relationship of all, the one with yourself. Words carry energy. They can build or break, uplift or undermine. And since your self-talk is something you hear every single day, it has the power to either chain you to your fears or launch you toward your potential. You may not be able to control every thought that enters your mind, but you can choose which ones you nurture, which ones you challenge, and which ones you speak aloud. And in doing so, you take back the power from the inner enemy, one word at a time. The people you consistently surround yourself with have a profound effect on who you become. Whether you notice it or not, you absorb the energy, habits, and mindsets of those around you. Just as a single drop of dye can color an entire glass of water, the thoughts and beliefs of those closest to you can shape your self-perception, influence your decisions, and either accelerate your growth or slowly corrode your confidence. If you want to defeat the inner enemy, the doubts, fears, and insecurities that live in your mind, you cannot afford to be around voices that echo them. Many people underestimate the subtle power of influence. If you constantly spend time with individuals who complain, criticize, and carry a defeated mindset, you will start to mirror that energy, not because you're weak, but because influence is inevitable. Negativity, like a virus, spreads quietly. People who always expect the worst, who mock ambition, who fear change, who find comfort in mediocrity, those are not just casual companions. They become silent collaborators with your inner enemy. Every time they discourage your ideas, every time they remind you of your limits instead of your potential, they reinforce the self-doubt that already lives in your head. On the other hand, surrounding yourself with people who challenge and uplift you is like planting yourself in fertile soil. These are the people who see your greatness even when you forget it. They speak life into your dreams, not fear. They hold you accountable to your goals, not because they doubt you, but because they believe you're capable of more. They call out your excuses, not to shame you, but to push you beyond them. They don't just support your comfort, they support your evolution. Being around people like this transforms the internal narrative. Suddenly you're not alone in your battle. You have voices around you that drown out the inner critic and replace it with encouragement, clarity, and strength. It's not about surrounding yourself with people who flatter you or always agree with you. That can be just as dangerous. It's about surrounding yourself with those who are honest, driven, disciplined, and committed to growth. People who aren't afraid to tell you the truth when you're off track, but who also remind you of your capability when you forget. Their energy becomes a mirror, reflecting back to you a higher version of yourself. Their ambition fuels yours. Their courage makes you braver. Their consistency makes you more disciplined. Sometimes choosing the right circle means letting go of the familiar. It means distancing yourself from relationships that no longer serve your growth, even if they're comfortable or long-standing. That can be painful, but growth always requires letting go. You're not obligated to keep close anyone who fuels your fears, doubts, or stagnation. You're allowed to choose better. In fact, you must. Because defeating the inner enemy requires not just inner work, it requires external alignment. The environment you create around you must support the person you are becoming. Your circle should reflect your values, your vision, and your standards. If you want to think big, be around big thinkers. If you want to act boldly, be around action takers. If you want to speak positively, be around people who protect their language. It's not about comparison, it's about elevation. The right people won't make you feel small. They'll remind you how much bigger you can be. They won't feed your fears, they'll fuel your faith. And through their example, their encouragement, and their presence, they become a powerful weapon in your fight against the voice that tells you to give up, to hide, to settle. You don't need to do it alone. The journey of defeating the inner enemy is hard enough without being surrounded by outer enemies in disguise. Seek those who see your light. Stand with those who walk in their truth. Build with those who are not afraid to grow. Because in a world that constantly tries to dim your fire, the right people will keep it burning bright. Discomfort is not the enemy, it is the doorway. In a world that glorifies ease and instant gratification, many people have developed an instinct to flee from anything that feels uncomfortable. The moment anxiety creeps in, they escape into distraction. The moment failure appears, they retreat into silence. The moment uncertainty arises, they run back to the familiar, even if that familiar is filled with pain. But the truth is, you cannot grow without discomfort. You cannot heal, transform, or evolve without first sitting in the fire of your fears and doubts. Discomfort is where the real work begins. It's where the inner enemy is exposed, confronted, and ultimately disarmed. The inner enemy does not appear during the easy moments. It shows up when you're on the edge of change, when you're breaking old patterns, when you're daring to want more. It whispers that you're not ready, that it's too risky, that you'll never make it. And in that moment of discomfort, most people surrender, not because the voice is right, but because they've never learned how to stay still, to stay present, to stay grounded while the storm inside rages. But growth demands that you stay. It demands that you resist the urge to numb, to escape, to distract, and instead choose to feel fully. Because in feeling fully, you begin to take your power back. Learning to sit with discomfort is not about suffering for the sake of it. It's about recognizing that the feelings we often avoid, pain, fear, shame, sadness, insecurity, are messengers. They're signals pointing towards something unhealed, something undeveloped, something real. And when you run from these feelings, you're not avoiding them, you're prolonging them. Whatever you bury will rise again. Whatever you suppress will surface in another form through unhealthy habits, reactive behavior, emotional numbness, or mental exhaustion. True strength lies in turning toward the discomfort and asking, what are you here to teach me? When you sit with discomfort long enough, something powerful happens. You start to realize that you can survive it. You learn that the emotions you feared weren't fatal, that the silence you once avoided holds answers, that the pain you carried was actually pointing you toward healing. You stop reacting impulsively. You begin responding consciously. You gain clarity about who you are and what you value. And from that place of clarity, you make wiser decisions. You stop living from a place of avoidance and start living from a place of intention. Sitting with discomfort also trains your nervous system. It increases your emotional capacity. Most people are not mentally weak, they're emotionally overwhelmed. They've never been taught how to breathe through a moment of panic, how to stay present in a moment of doubt, how to sit still when the urge to escape is screaming. But with practice, your tolerance expands. You begin to welcome challenge. You stop fearing the unknown. You become unshakable, not because you have eliminated discomfort, but because you've stopped fearing it. The most powerful transformations come through the moments you wanted to run, but didn't. Through the days you wanted to quit, but kept going. Through the feelings that tried to drown you, but you chose to breathe anyway. That is where you meet your real self. Not the version that looks good on paper, but the version that can stand in truth, in silence, in resistance, and still choose growth. The inner enemy will always try to convince you that discomfort is dangerous. That if you feel too much, face too much, or stay too long in difficult moments, you'll break. But the reality is the opposite. It's in those very moments that you are remade. You are stretched, strengthened, and refined. The pain becomes purpose, the struggle becomes strength, and the discomfort once feared becomes a familiar companion on the road to becoming who you were always meant to be. So in the end, the greatest battles we face are not with the world outside us, they are with the voice within us. The doubts that whisper we are not enough, the fears that tell us to settle, the pain that convinces us to hide. But you must remember this. That voice is not truth. It is not your destiny. It is only a shadow of who you used to be, not a reflection of who you are becoming. Every step you take toward growth, every time you choose courage over comfort, discipline over distraction, belief over fear, you are silencing the inner enemy and awakening the strongest parts of yourself. You are not here to live small. You are not here to surrender to self-doubt. You are here to rise, to fight, to evolve, and to lead a life that reflects your highest potential. You may not always feel strong, but strength is not a feeling, it is a choice. Make that choice daily. Choose to stand when it's easier to fall. Choose to believe when doubt screams louder. Choose to keep moving forward even when you're afraid. Because the day you decide to stop running from your inner enemy is the day you begin to become unstoppable.